Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, hate during a football game. Supporters of a local team say they were subjected to racist taunts.
This is a huge issue that's not just happening at San Clemente High, but throughout our country.
Now administrators at both schools say they're investigating. New action on a rising public health issue. What California will soon be doing to warn people about the dangers of vaping.
And it came head on, and it was like a blowtorch. It just cut everything to the ground.
And we go in depth. A local view of the climate crisis. Tonight, we go to San Diego's backcountry to begin 1 week dedicated to climate coverage. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, September 16th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. We begin tonight with breaking news. An officer-involved shooting in Logan Heights. We're told a San Diego police officer was in a foot chase with the suspect when he opened fire, hitting the man. The shooting took place around 3:30 near 35th Street and National Avenue. Police have the area closed off as they investigate. The suspect was taken to UC San Diego. No word on his condition. The officer was not hurt. They say it hurt so much more than any game loss. Tonight, supporters of Lincoln High School are speaking out. They say they were subjected to racism during a trip to Orange County. Reporter Tina Patel has more on the allegations that are now being investigated.
Lincoln High School football players were excited to play San Clemente Friday night, but while they were trying to generate some offense on the field, their fans were playing defense in the stands, fighting back against racial slurs.
We were trying to figure out why fans were leaving early, and to find out later on that was happening and really hurt.
This morning, activists joined Coach Smith outside San Clemente High School to talk about what happened.
Alumni and parents were called the N-word multiple times. Cheerleaders who went to the restroom were called dogs, were asked where were their leashes, and were told that they would be dog walked.
We talked to a San Clemente student who admits there have been some racial issues at the school in the past, but he says he was surprised to hear about the comments made to the opposing team.
Who would go up to someone and just say that? And especially saying that adults said it to kids as well. What adult would think to say it to a teenager?
Both San Clemente and Lincoln High School principals say they are now investigating. Activists hope that's just the first step to addressing this.
But I think that we have to call out every big or little thing that happens around racism, that happens around bias, because if we don't call it out, it perpetuates, it continues to happen.
That was Tina Patel reporting. Lincoln High School's coach says there's a possibility they may have to play San Clemente again, and if so, he wants to see more changes to support the players and fans so that they're better protected. Trips to California have been rare for President Trump, but this week millions of dollars are at stake for his re-election campaign. Starting tomorrow, he'll be busy. The two-day swing starts with fundraisers in the Bay Area and Beverly Hills. On Wednesday, President Trump will meet with donors in LA and in San Diego. In all, President Trump will raise about $15 million for his campaign and the Republican Party. President Trump and Governor Gavin Newsom are often at odds, but there's one issue they're both taking action on. KPBS health reporter Taryn Minto tells us about the governor's new rules for vaping.
The governor also wants to increase taxes on liquid nicotine, develop warnings on ads and packaging, and stop the sale of illegal vaping products. Hundreds of people have become sick in the U.S. with a vaping-related lung illness, including 12 in San Diego. At least one patient here was 17.
You don't have bubblegum flavored, mango flavored tobacco products unless you're trying to target an audience that you are losing. That's young people.
Dakota Collins mixes flavored e-liquids at the San Diego-based California Vaping Company. He says the company supports steps to stop youth vaping and recently updated its labels to be less appealing.
There's no cartoons, there's no pictures of food, so for our finished products, we're really trying to go towards a 30-year-old market.
The governor's $20 million digital and social media awareness campaign rolls out next month. That's also when he's asking staff to submit their recommendations to meet his other goals. Taryn Minto, KPBS News.
A shakeup at SeaWorld. The company's CEO is leaving after just a few months on the job. Gus Antorcha was announced as the head of SeaWorld in February. In a statement, he said he still believes in SeaWorld's mission, even though he had a different approach. SeaWorld's theme parks, including here in San Diego, have seen their business rebound over the past year. This week, KPBS is joining hundreds of news organizations from across the globe to confront the realities of climate change. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson shows us how the climate crisis touches different corners of the San Diego region.
The threat of wildfire is a fact of life in San Diego, but a fire season that used to span the late summer and early fall is now year-round. That means bigger risks and higher costs for people like Amy Quinlan, who makes the backcountry her home.
So we kind of, during the dry season, have to kind of get up during the night and go outside and check and see if there's anything. So paying attention to what's happening, it's always kind of in the back of your mind.
This mindset is the new normal, says David Victor, a UC San Diego professor and an expert on climate change policy.
The protective measures we take to protect structures, houses in the middle of the forest, communities that have been burned, protect them against future fires. That might involve simple things like much bigger fire breaks. It might involve much more active identification of fires early on. And then next thing you know, you're in effect managing the entire, at least woody ecosystem because of your concerns about fire.
When Pine Valley resident Major Robert Langston signed up for California's Army National Guard, he knew his duties would include dealing with the impacts of fire. He didn't know it would be almost his entire job. Men and women with the Guard are not only deployed to manage evacuations during wildfires, they're now fighting fires and building fire breaks.
Our level of support has been increasing. We're providing more support to especially wildland fires. So from a firefighting perspective, I mean, for whatever reason, fires are getting more and more intense.
San Diego County's climate change impacts don't end at the forest's edge. They're also felt up and down the coast. Carlsbad's Aqua Farm is a small hatchery that's been selling oysters and mussels to restaurants for 50 years. Production manager Matt Stenke says acidification caused by warming oceans devastated the industry a decade ago.
When ocean acidification hit the Pacific Northwest, they were reporting a 90 to 95% failure in their normal production. And you ended up with a lot of farmers who had open space to grow things and they were unable to buy seed. And that problem persisted for a few years.
The threat is becoming more dire. Dan Cahan, a researcher with the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, says the warmer water is, in essence, choking off the food supply.
And the warmer the oceans get, the less oxygen it can accommodate, and low oxygen is not good in general for ecosystems.
At the southern edge of the county in Imperial Beach, the urgency is sea level rise. Coastal flooding is something California's beach community has always dealt with, but sea level rise expert Robert Guza says it's getting worse.
Imperial Beach is a great example of a city in between a rock, a hard place, and a vice. On one side is the ocean. On the other side is the Tijuana estuary. To the south is Mexico, and it's a thin strip of land that is surrounded by water. And so it can get flooded and it does flood from both sides.
Guza is worried for IB because the sea level rise is happening while the region suffers from a perpetual shortage of beach sand.
Rising sea level will take a chronic problem, shortage of sand, and see how bad it can get by just flooding the beaches on top of it that are already sand-starved.
Imperial Beach lifeguard captain Robert Stabenow grew up surfing in IB's waves. Now it's his job to protect residents and property when waves wash into city streets.
Climate change, they've been talking about it for the last 5-10 years. You've been hearing more and more about possible climate change and sea level rise, and now we're actually seeing the impacts. It's real.
As these stories unfold, it'll become even more apparent that San Diego is in the grips of a climate crisis. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And higher temperatures means less snowpack, and that means California's forests are drier for longer. Scientists agree this chain reaction begins with climate change and ends with more wildfires. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser visited a Ramona couple who lost their home to a fire, but they're committed to staying.
That wind hit us at about 120 miles per hour wind with fire.
Pete Beauregard squints in the morning sun as he thinks back to October 22nd, 2007.
It came head on, and it was like a blowtorch. It just cut everything to the ground.
His home in Ramona burnt down in the Witch Creek fire, which spurred 500,000 evacuations and destroyed more than 1,000 homes. Despite their devastating loss, Beauregard and his wife, Amy McQuillan, loved the backcountry too much to leave it. They built a new home right next to the spot where their old one burned down.
I love this place. It's like Amy says, it's spiritual. I mean, I put a lot of my life into it, a lot of tragedy, a lot of great times, here.
But they have paid a high price for staying in a home that's so special to them. In 2007, their insurance was around $1,500 a year. Last year, it was $55,000 a year. A warming world has made life become much more expensive for a lot of people in rural areas susceptible to fires. That includes insurance and other costs, says David Victor, a climate scientist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
That might involve simple things like much bigger fire breaks. It might involve much more active identification of fires early on. And then next thing you know, you're in effect managing the entire, at least woody ecosystem because of your concerns about fire.
He says in the future, the backcountry might end up like the coast, affordable to only a few.
I think some people who live in that environment are willing to spend huge resources to protect themselves with bigger fire breaks, with different kinds of materials, with private fire services, which are now emerging, including connected to the insurance industry.
We always still have to be on guard.
Thomas Schutz is a spokesman for CAL FIRE. He says fire season used to be just that, a season. Now, it's basically year-round. In the last year and a half, California has seen 6 of its 10 worst fires ever, and last year's fire season was the deadliest and most destructive on record. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a statewide emergency on wildfires in March, far earlier than the normal fire season, that in part allowed CAL FIRE to hire just under 400 new firefighters. But the San Diego region hasn't seen a big fire since 2007, and Schutz worries that could lead to complacency.
But the potential is still certainly there, and I hope it doesn't take a catastrophic fire to really drive it home.
But despite the risk, Schutz wouldn't say people like Pete and Amy should leave the backcountry.
I don't ever want to discourage somebody from finding the spot that makes them the happiest.
Come this way, walk this way.
Back at home in Ramona, Pete and Amy are doing what they want. They've made their new house the first passive house in the county, a standard for energy efficiency that means it has minimal impact on the environment. They have solar panels, their own wind turbine, a computer system that monitors energy use, and heavily insulated doors. They are also trying to make their new home fire resistant. Beauregard says in the next fire,
I'm planning on staying, the fire. I have this system here. It's a pump that, will go into the pool, and it gives me a really good spray.
They've also cleared brush from around the house and made their home completely airtight. This helps keep it cool and, Beauregard says, protected. But their airtight home creates additional worries. It's hard to hear or smell what's going on outside.
So we during the dry season, have to get up during the night and go outside and check and see if there's anything. So paying attention to what's happening. It's always kind of in the back of your mind.
Claire Tragesser, KPBS News.
And tomorrow, reporter Eric Anderson visits an oyster hatchery in Carlsbad that's battling the impacts of a warming ocean. And more proof of our warming planet comes today from NOAA. The National Weather Agency says this past August was the second hottest on record. That goes back 140 years. Last month was nearly 2 degrees above the average over the last century. NOAA says the 5 warmest Augusts have all happened since 2014, with August 2016 being the warmest ever. And September has not brought in cooler weather. Today was another hot and windy day. Marvin Gomez tells us when we can expect a cool down.
Hope you're having a great day so far. Thanks for staying with us here on KPBS News. And some of the weather highlights we have for you this week. We are going to see below average temperatures and some morning low clouds moving through the region and heading into tonight and even into tomorrow. We are going to see some gusty winds even inland, especially across the higher elevations. And that's because we have a trough that's moving in here across the west coast. And overall, you could see earlier today, we did see some of those showers moving in across portions of Northern California. Even throughout our area, we did get to see a couple of sprinkles as well. Heading into tonight, partly cloudy skies, temperatures cooling down to 65 degrees across the metro area. Taking a look at the rest of San Diego County, Oceanside 59. Heading towards Ramona, 52, Borrego Springs, 70 degrees, and towards Mount Laguna, low 50s for you. Definitely feeling like fall as we head into tomorrow across much of the southwest. We have this cold front that's going to be pushing through the region, and that will definitely bring cooler temperatures across the northern part of our state. For our area here, we'll see highs around 100 degrees across Borrego Springs, heading into Escondido with a high of 86. 80 for Oceanside, and across San Diego, 78 with lots of sunshine heading into the afternoon hours. Taking a look at the AccuWeather extended forecast along the coast, we are going to see those temperatures stay in the high 70s for the next couple of days. Keep in mind, we are going to see some of those low clouds along the coast as we get our day started. Inland temperatures not so bad, 87 for Tuesday, and then taking you into Wednesday with a high of 83, mostly sunny conditions along the deserts. We are going to see triple digits for Tuesday, but then heading into the middle of the work week and into the second half of the work week, we are going to see those temperatures drop to the mid to low 90s. Across the mountains, well, 72 for Tuesday, mostly sunny and feeling very nice heading into Wednesday, 67, even chillier heading into Thursday. For KPBS News, I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez. Back to you.
This week, media organizations across the world, including KPBS, are telling stories about climate change. We're focusing our coverage on people directly impacted, and that's especially true of the younger generation. Today, we'll hear from Talia Miracle, a 15-year-old from Encinitas, in her own words.
With the way that the oceans are headed and the climate is headed, which is scary because we want to think we have the same opportunities that every generation before us has had, but at this point we don't. And I'm fortunate to be in a generation where we're so active and engaged in the community and how we can make a change. But it's scary to think that it's not beneficial to have a family anymore, and it's not beneficial to live the same convenient lifestyle that we've spent so much time trying to develop. So yeah, it's definitely always on the back burner, whatever I'm doing.
In La Jolla, the Salk Institute is working on a new initiative. It's funded by a $35 million grant to study how plants may hold a solution to climate change. Back in April, KPBS's Mark Sauer talked with 2 of the professors involved.
And Professor Law, what's Salk's Harnessing Plants initiative?
So the Harnessing Plant initiative at Salk is based on harnessing the natural ability of plants to take CO2 out of the atmosphere. And what we'd like to do is generate plants that can draw down a significant portion of the excess CO2 that's put into the atmosphere based on human activity. And so while this is clearly an audacious project, the basic idea behind the core idea is very easy to understand. So we want to use the fact that plants during the process of photosynthesis take CO2 from the atmosphere and generate plant biomass. And then the idea would be to generate plants that take that CO2 and generate deeper deeper, more robust root systems that contain molecules that are resistant to degradation. So in a year-over-year basis, we would be essentially locking more carbon from the atmosphere into the soil.
And Professor Noel, how many plants or what will it take to achieve the project goal of reducing CO2 by 20 to 46%? It's a pretty ambitious goal.
It's a very ambitious goal, and we're focusing really at this moment on crops. So the major food crops that are used worldwide. That allows us to gain the acreage that we need to actually combat the issue of CO2 in the atmosphere. And right now we're looking at about 8 plants that are grown on about half of the global acreage used to farm plants.
And which type of plants are we talking about? How did you identify which ones to grow?
So we actually looked at what are actually grown as the major food crops worldwide in terms of their sheer acreage. So things like corn, rice, wheat, and then even things like cover crops that are used to actually enrich the soil, radishes, clover, and ryegrass.
All right, so I'll throw this out as kind of a jump ball question for both of you. How do you determine the impact? How do you scale this up on a worldwide basis and hope it has enough impact to be meaningful to thwart climate change?
So, I mean, on a broad level, of course, we want to try to get these plants, the prototypes out and running, and then we have to partner with NGOs and seed companies and talk to farmers to get these out and planted at scale and take advantage of that already set in place infrastructure. And in terms of measurement, there'll be a lot of part of the project is to be able to measure and quantify it in much level detail than we're able to do now, exactly how much carbon is staying behind in the soils. But the nice part about the initiative is that it's very scalable. So the one individual plant only needs to be a little bit better at doing taking the CO2 and storing it in these cork-like molecules in the soil, and if you add it up over all the different plants that we're trying to generate and all the different acreage that we'd like to cover, we can make a big impact.
I've been speaking with Salk Institute professors Joe Noel and Julie Law, both members of the Salk Plant Biology team. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That interview was part of our coverage from the KPBS Climate Change Desk. You can find all of our stories at kpbs.org. California is home to one of the largest hospitals for marine mammals in the world, and it's seeing more stranded and starving animals. Reporter Liz Kreutz shows us some of the work being done and how climate change is playing a role.
Up and down the West Coast, Pacific gray whales are showing up dead or stranded at an alarming rate.
Another dead whale has washed up on a Bay Area shore.
At the same time, sea lions and seals are washing up, malnourished and with diseases. To understand why this is happening and what's being done to help these animals, we drove into the hills of Sausalito to the Marine Mammal Center, the world's largest hospital for marine mammals where many of these animals get treated. Volunteers were there doing morning feeds, giving the animals fish filled with medications.
Yeah. Is that okay with you? That's perfect. Yeah. Okay. Who wants to go with me?
We're seeing whales washing up this summer. We're seeing sea lions washing up. A lot of people are wondering what's going on.
Yeah, it's a great question. The last 5 years we've seen a big uptick in the number of patients every year. So historically, we would see maybe 600 to 800 animals per year. The last 5 years, we've seen at least 800 patients per year.
The simplest answer is most of the animals are starving, unable to find food. But why is where it gets more complex.
The state of the ocean is definitely in peril. These animals are incredible sentinels for what's happening on a bigger, broader picture.
Some of the patients here respond well to their treatments and are soon set free, but others have more severe health problems. We're on our way into the surgery wing of the hospital now. This is where the animals that require extra care, whether it be for pneumonia, infections, toxins, get treated. Inside, doctors are preparing for procedures on 2 California sea lions.
Okay, let's go ahead and take him.
First, on one named Flyaway.
So today we're going to be taking x-rays of his chest to see how well his pneumonia has responded to treatment.
And later, a more complex surgery on one named Sulik, who has an infection in her left eye.
The best possibility that this animal has for recovery is to surgically remove the eye. And our patients are able to survive remarkably well if they have one functional eye.
If this surgery seems impressive, it is. The Marine Mammal Center is also a leading teaching hospital, and the methods and procedures implemented here by Dr. Field are being taught and used around the world. After all, this is a global problem.
The problems that the animals come in with are an indicator of what's happening in the ocean. And some of that is driven by climate change. So changes in prey availability, for example, can be driven by changes in water temperature, which is a direct reflection of climate activity.
Many of the animals are released back into the ocean, healthy and happy. A complicated fix to an even more complicated problem.
If the animals are unhealthy from eating the food that they normally eat, we eat that too. So we run the risk of becoming sick from some of these things as well. But even every day-to-day little things can make a difference. Reducing our use of plastics, beach cleanups, all these small things add up when you get hundreds or thousands of people involved.
That's Liz Kreutz reporting. The Marine Mammal Center is largely funded by grants and private donations.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, nearly 50,000 U.S. auto workers walk the picket lines to force GM to improve wages. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The KABOO Music Festival will have a new home next year. As the event wrapped up this weekend in Del Mar, it was announced that KABOO will move to Petco Park. Concerts will be held inside the stadium and surrounding parking lots. This weekend's KABOO Festival averaged about 35,000 people during the 3-day event. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.